At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions from Magi Quest, a live action game that takes place throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part, with 23 lodges across the country, you're always only a short drive away from adventure. I took my daughter there for her birthday a few years ago, and we had the best time. We stayed in one of their themed suites. There was so much to do inside the lodge, as well as all the water fun. The staff were great. The lifeguards were on it too. Would definitely go again. So bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
You were in a safe environment, so you were connected to these really angelic, good spiritual beings. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of healing there. And that's often what they talk about saying is an ego death.
Yes. I felt like I died that night.
And it's not that the ego's dead. It's that the ego is reorganized in a healthier way. So it's like a rebirth is what it's really like.
That's exactly what it felt like.
And you had that. And so that's like amazing that you had that. It's super scary for that short period of time.
Oh my God.
But once you break through that, you're connected.
You're listening to Make Some Noise podcast, episode number 690 with guest Dr. Jeff McNairy. Welcome to Make Some Noise podcast, your guide for strategies, tools, and insight to empower yourself. I'm your host, Andrea Owen, global speaker, entrepreneur, life coach since 2007, and author of 3 books that have been translated into 18 languages and are available in 22 countries. Each week, I'll bring you a guest or a lesson that will help you maximize unshakable confidence, master resilience, and make some noise in your life. You ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I am so glad that you are here. Here's the thing. I know that I've been talking a lot about plant medicine, more specifically psychedelic therapy. And I want you to know something, and I want to be very clear about this before we get into this episode. A couple of things. And I mentioned this later in the podcast and actually ask our guest about it. For one, psychedelic therapy isn't for everyone. I think that talk therapy is for everyone. Psychedelic therapy, not so much. And you'll hear more about that later. And I just want to make sure that you all are aware that I definitely am not pushing this on anyone. And I do think that it is only for people who have done their due diligence around if they feel like it's right for them, as well as in some cases, spoken to their doctor if it's actually right for them. And also that my job and the sort of intention that I have behind all of this, even if while I am doing it for my own personal growth, as well as bringing you the information for you to be able to make a decision, I come at this from a place of skepticism. First and foremost, I've really always come at it from a place of skepticism of, really, is it really working that much? And if it is, show me the science. At the end of the day, I am a science geek. I love evidence. Show me the data of how this is actually working in our bodies. Long before I ever came to do this work, my background is in exercise physiology. That's what I went to college for. I'm endlessly fascinated by how the human body works as a whole. I'm also very interested in behavior change and how do we change these patterns in order to make our lives better, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, and spiritually as well. And that's where all the personal growth comes in that I've been talking about on almost 700 podcasts episodes now, as well as psychedelic therapy. And that's why I was first, of course, skeptical about ayahuasca. And also I wanted to make sure that if I ever brought this topic specifically to you, it was from the basis, my own basis and knowledge from a medical doctor. And that's one of the reasons I was excited when Dr. Jeff McNairy, who you're going to hear from now, was excited about being on my show. And I was like, oh my gosh, thank goodness. Somebody who's, and from the United States too. Dr. Jeff McNairy, originally from UCLA Medical Center. And I respect his work so much, and the time that he has had specifically around this particular plant medicine of ayahuasca. I love learning about and understanding the sort of marriage between the spiritual and soulful side of things and the science. Put that all together for me, and I'm in. I want to learn about it. And that is really what this episode is about. Because at the end of the day, my job in this show is about your growth and your healing. And as I've said many times, I want to show you and tell you about all of the options you have, all of the options. And plant medicine, psychedelic therapy is something that I am currently digging into, and it's been profoundly helpful in my own growth and healing. So therefore, I'm bringing it to you. Also, at the very end of this episode, you'll hear me ask kind of a bonus question, which I don't know if I've ever done this in an interview before. I wanted to record it for myself, and was selfishly using Jeff's time to ask him a very specific question about an experience that I had during my fourth ayahuasca ceremony when I was in Costa Rica at Rhythmia. It was such a profound experience that was quite honestly terrifying. And I wanted to know more about it from him. Of course, I had gotten some information from the internet, but was really stuck in getting any more information anywhere from anybody that had had an experience like mine. It was very specific. And so you'll hear me ask him about it at the very last question. And you'll hear that it sounds a little bit different from the other questions that I asked, because it was kind of a private conversation, but I wanted to share it with you so that you can get all the information that I can possibly give you. I don't ever want to keep anything secret. Lastly, if you are interested in coming with me, I am gathering up a group of people who are interested in coming together as a group to go to Costa Rica and visit Rhythmia for a week. And I'm working on getting some kind of a package deal from Rhythmia. So please stay tuned for those details. They are coming very soon. And I'm recording this intro ahead of time, so they might already be here in the future when this comes out at the end of August. But if you want to be on that interest list, please DM me on Instagram. Hey, Andrea Owen over there. Send me a quick DM and just say, Aya interested, AYA. Or you can email us support@andreaowen.com. And in the subject line, you can just say, Aya interested. And I will personally reach out to you to let you know the details and see if you want to jump on a phone call to see if it is right for you. And we'll go from there. All right. Let me tell you a little bit about today's guest. And he has one of the shortest bios I've ever read. Dr. Jeff McNairy is the Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Rhythmia Life Advancement Center in Costa Rica. So without further ado, here is Dr. Jeff. Dr. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
I am excited to have you be the first person that I have specifically talked about ayahuasca on the show who's an actual expert. And before we get into that, though, I want to ask you about a topic that my audience seems to struggle with, and that is around anxiety. And I say my audience, but me too. I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder in 2003. I was in my late 20s and felt like medication changed my life with that, but also it felt a little shocking. I mean, this was 20-ish years ago, and I had never had a mental health diagnosis or anything like that. So I know that a lot of people carry anxiety in their bodies and in their subconscious, and this is something that you talk about. So from your perspective, how does untreated trauma live in, I think it's the amygdala, and how does trauma specifically show up as anxiety in our lives?
When we go through hard times in our life, whether it's in childhood or adult years, when we're in a trauma moment, we kick into a fight or flight response in order to get through that moment or to survive it. And the emotions that are present during a trauma event they basically get in the way of our survival. So if I'm being abused or neglected, or I see something that's really shocking or scary, all of the fear and the anger or the whatever it might be that comes up for me, that's going to either freeze me or make it so that I can't get through that moment. So what happens is those emotions get pushed into the amygdala, and that's the part of the brain that stores the subconscious, and sort of our memories go into there. And they lay over there for a while we can behaviorally get through that moment.
Okay.
And then what's supposed to happen, which never really does, because in a Western sort of mindset, we're not good at allowing this next part, which is those emotions are supposed to surface later, and we deal with them. We process them, right? That's kind of like the ideal scenario. But what happens is our lives are so fast paced, and we're going through so much, and we're just multitasking constantly and trying to make bills and deal with family and whatever, that we just keep pushing emotions into that amygdala. And so then as that amygdala becomes full of a lot of this unresolved emotional baggage, these emotions start to creep out into the prefrontal cortex, which is where our logical sort of rational self is, our consciousness. It's the amygdala kind of knocking and saying, hey, I got some issues over here. Can you please?
I got some bad news. Yeah. Sorry.
And that's scary for people, and they don't really want to deal with that. So that can manifest as anxiety. It can manifest as depression. It can manifest as all kinds of things, and fear, all kinds of stuff. And so that's a lot of times where the anxiety for people comes from. It's unresolved emotional trauma.
I don't think I have had, what episode am I on now? Almost 700 episodes. I've had a lot of guests, and so many of them have talked about anxiety and have talked about this, but I don't think I've ever had someone explain it so simply. And I appreciate that so much, because when you were saying like a trauma happens, especially from our primary experiences or, childhood, teenager. And you said, I forget what words you used. You said, and we don't have something to get through it. And I was going to stop you and ask what that meant, but you later touched on it. You said, we don't know what behavior to do in that moment. So is that fair? Like something happens and we don't have the coping skills. We don't have the understanding. We don't have the experience to be able to deal with whatever just happened.
That's right. And especially like if we're under 12. So there's different sort of protocols. If you're a kid versus if you're an adult, it kind of works a little differently. So under the age of 12, we are not aware of how to get through a feeling abandoned, or how to feel like if we're being abused, neglected. That's a shocking event for a kid, because our needs need to be met emotionally, or else we feel like we're in danger. It's like a danger thing. A survival instinct kicks in. And so that's where I need to unplug from that event and not feel anything, and run or sit there and just take it, or unplug and disconnect and just get through that moment so that I can then survive and then deal with it down the road. Again, I don't even know how to do that, but that's where that sort of stems from in childhood.
And then a pattern is created in our brain, like literal neural pathways. And so the next time it happens, or even something similar, like our brain automatically knows what to do. And that's usually avoid, freeze.
Yes.
Some kind of behavior.
That's where the synaptic plasticity of our mind is used in a way that just default, it starts going to that road and just throwing things back into the amygdala. So people that have trauma from childhood, as adults, they have this really ingrained sort of very deep connection between just avoidance, and they can just push everything there very easily.
Just run away or shut down emotionally. I want to ask you too, because, we often hear about the abuses that happen, or more of these like big T traumas that happen in childhood or under 12. I was someone who always, when it came to my own personal growth, brushed that to the side, because I was very blessed. Like I didn't have there wasn't any abuse, or even, even violent verbal abuse or anything like that. Like, sure, there was a handful of things that happened that were really difficult, and that I still will think about sometimes, that sort of shaped how I feel about myself and show up in relationships. But more so for me, and I think that when I say this, there's going to be a lot of people listening who can relate, is that, and I call people that come to this show who are deeply interested in personal development, I call them seekers. Like these are people who, for whatever reason, their soul was put on this earth to be the type of person who's seeking something greater outside of themselves, whether it's to be the best version of themselves, or whether it's more specific towards spirituality or some like deeper meaning. And for these people, at least in my experience, growing up, I remember very young being put into a family where we didn't talk about hard things, but I wanted to talk about them. Like I was endlessly curious about them. Like I could almost feel elephants in the room. Like, what is this thing that's not being addressed? Like, and I didn't know what it was. It was emotions. It was hard conversations.
Right.
It was things like grief that they just avoided. And bless my parents, like baby boomers and silent generation, like they didn't have the tools, it was like, we don't talk about these things. And so no blame and shame to them, but can those be things that are considered like small T traumas that do end up shape us like you just described?
Yes. And the big part of why is because when there's, as you say, the elephant in the room, when you're a kid and there's this unresolved sort of emotional stuff hanging around, that creates in a child an unstable emotional environment. And
Unsafe.
So a kid doesn't unsafe. Yeah, a kid doesn't feel safe in that environment. Even though logically speaking, if you were your age now looking back on it, you say, oh, it was a very safe home. Like
sure,
nothing bad happened.
No name calling, like we were nice.
Yeah. It was, but what a child is constantly doing, because they're using the tools they have at their disposal, which are not the same amount of tools that adults will have.
Right.
They have 2 or 3 or maybe 4 max, is that they're assessing around them constantly, where's the area of where I can be comfortable and I can feel safe and I can feel connected. So the unresolved sort of emotional stuff around creates an instability that leads to that empath sort of explanation that I often talk about at Rhythmia for a lot of the people. Probably a lot of your listeners are in that category.
Yes, the people who tend to take on other people's feelings and feel things that they can't explain and all of that good stuff. I am curious, like on a personal note, like your background, like you worked in rehab facilities in Los Angeles and like kind of like the Western mental health world for many, many years. And seems like you had a pretty good gig going there. I'm super curious, like if you could briefly tell us like what brought you into psychedelic therapy and ceremonial plant medicine? Like you went for a big one. It wasn't like you were like, let's do some psilocybin. So I'm curious, like, was there something that like, did you have your own experience or did you see it working really well with a certain demographic of your patients?
Well, I wanted to go to medical school and I wanted to deliver babies. That's
okay. I didn't know that.
That's how my career started. And so I'm the oldest of 7 kids. So I have 30 nieces and nephews right now. It's crazy, but wow. I have 5 of my own kids. So I love kids. So I started off, I got a master's degree in public health from UCLA. And that's where I saw the big macro vision of healthcare for first California and Los Angeles, but then I expanded out to like the world, sort of the way the healthcare runs in the world. And I saw a lot of these disparities, all this different stuff, this inequality and all these different problems that were going around the world that were really concerning. Yeah. And at home here for me in Los Angeles, where I grew up, there's lots of poverty and lots of issues and lots of healthcare problems. And so I ran a division of UCLA's OBGYN department at the time. And I saw that a lot of the women that we were working with had trauma. Yeah. And they weren't coming in for trauma therapy or work. They were coming in for normal OBGYN stuff. But on the side, they would often have trauma. And so we weren't addressing this trauma in a way that I thought was appropriate. We just give them a referral, maybe put them on some meds, and that was it. Yeah. And I didn't like that sort of surface level sort of interaction. And so what happened was I got into medical school at UCLA. I decided not to go, but to go into psychology. And so I went and got my doctorate in psych. And that's where I started running a rehab in Malibu that's pretty well known called Passages. And then I was the director for 8 years. And I also ran a locked psychiatric unit in Pasadena called Las Encinas. And so I was in these clinical environments, first at UCLA and then all around. And what I was noticing was that all my clients that had these different severe things, whether it was addiction or anxiety or depression or trauma or whatever it was, mental health issues, they were all plateauing at a certain level. And I saw that the system was about bringing stability so that they could be safe and not have suicidal issues or not relapse and have overdose and all these things. So it all kind of made sense, but I never saw anybody really getting better. And so when I was at Passages, Malibu, this was a very alternative sort of drug and alcohol rehab at the time. Now there's a lot of places that are sort of similar, but back then we were not a 12-step facility. And that was sort of shocking to the addiction world because everything pretty much was.
Yeah.
And we were doing other types of therapies. We were doing Chinese medicine. We were doing spiritual counseling. We were doing body work. And the way that we were approaching the addiction was, let's look at your underlying issues and let's look at your trauma and let's bring it up and deal with it. So that was kind of like a hint for me to see that there's this road that you could look at that could really help people get past things. But the problem with the rehab model is 30 days is,
oh my gosh,
you're detoxing for 2 weeks.
Right.
And then maybe you got 10 days or 14 days after that to kind of get into something, but you can't really go deep in 30 days. And that's, so it wasn't really working either. So when I came across plant medicine, I was like, wow, this is a tool that possibly can be used for people that have these mental health issues and addiction issues. And it can help them really get to the bottom of it quickly in a way that's empowering. So that's kind of what led me down that different road. I was kind of slowly getting my eyes opened as I was working through grad school and my postdoc and medical things and sciences and biologies and blah, blah, blah. So I saw that this was a better path for me.
Okay, interesting. Just real quick, because we could have probably a whole podcast episode on this. I didn't know that that's how you started your career in OBGYN. And one of my many takeaways at my experience at Rhythmia and doing the ayahuasca ceremonies was how many similarities and parallels there were to my experience during ceremony as there were when I gave birth to my second child, which was a mostly not every single stage of it, but was mostly completely natural experience. And it was the wildest ride of my life to date. This was in 2009. At one point I didn't want to be we got to the hospital. I didn't want to be with anyone. I wanted to just be by myself for a minute with the lights down, and I wanted it quiet. And I was in the bathroom and I was holding on to the hand, the safety. Yes. Yeah. And I'm clutching it, and I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror and made eye contact with myself. And I had this feel, it even gives me goosebumps telling the story and dropping back into it, where a handful of things became very clear to me. One, I was not in charge. Something bigger, wiser, more ancient, smarter, safer was in charge of what was about to happen. Two, I didn't need to worry. Like, my body knew what to do. My brain sure as shit didn't. But my body was just going to do whatever it needed to do. And that I didn't need to worry. And the third thing was that it felt wild. It felt wild and completely primal. And that was the coolest thing ever. And I was like, it just felt so safe. Like, I didn't need to worry about anything. But if I let my brain come back online, then I started worrying about things. Yes. And so that was so similar to, and it's no wonder, it's like when you're dealing with plant medicine, it's a lot of similarities. But on that note, I also know that, and I don't want to walk away from this conversation without asking you this. I know that plant medicine, whether it's ayahuasca or any others, it's not for everyone. Correct. And it's not a cure-all. And although I am definitely up on my soapbox about it lately, and as someone in long-term recovery, I had to be very intentional, as I walked into this. But can you tell us a little bit about just who maybe this not be for? What should people think about before they make a decision to try plant medicine?
Yeah, and I agree completely with you that it isn't for everybody. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of modalities that can help people work past their issues that are available in the world. And in a Western world, some of those things are great. And sometimes meds can be amazing. And sometimes talk therapy can be amazing. And there's all these different things. But for a lot of people that model doesn't fit, plant medicine might be an option. But those that it's not for, I would say, are, first of all, most of the guests that have been to Rhythmia, and it's been almost 20,000 people, have all pretty much said the same thing. I felt called to the process.
Yes.
And that's important because that's where okay, this is for me. This is something that my soul is calling for. Mm-hmm. And so that's a common theme that we hear a lot with people. And if you don't feel the sort of the drive to do it, or you feel like really super scared or hesitant, then probably it's just not the right time, or it might never be the right time. And there are certain contraindications with ayahuasca in particular that are not good for people that have these things. So, for example, bipolar 1 is contraindicated. Now, bipolar 1 is very different than bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 means the person is mostly manic and they drop down into depression occasionally. And so a person that's manic has a high level of serotonin firing in their brain. And so all of these plant medicines, the majority of them, except for cannabis, actually cannabis does do this, but not as strongly, is they create a serotonin surge. They're called serotonin agonists, meaning they create serotonin, they release serotonin. So if somebody already has a high serotonin level and they add more, that can be very uncomfortable, not therapeutic. It can actually be dangerous. So that's a group of people that are not good for plant medicine. Also, people have different beliefs about their addiction recovery, for example. People have, cultural beliefs. People have religious beliefs. I don't personally feel, being a person that was raised very religious and still am, I don't believe that it contradicts any sort of religious doctrine or whatever, because we have people from all over the world with different cultural and social cultural beliefs and religious beliefs. But sometimes people feel uncomfortable with this indigenous sort of shamanic curandero approach. And that's totally okay, because it's totally different. Like, we're not used to that. Now, I studied, as an undergrad, I studied medical anthropology. I looked at Latin American culture for healthcare. And so I was like fascinated, but most people don't have that sort of context. So they feel uncomfortable with that. And it's understandable. So I think the biggest sort of message for your viewers or your listeners is that if you don't feel called to it, you can still look at it and kind of ask yourself a few questions. But then, if it's not your time, it's not your time. And if it's not for you, it's not for you. Like, sometimes we'll have a spouse, like a person will come that's married or in a relationship. And then their spouse is like, no way, I'm not doing it. And that's okay. Like, that happens. That's normal. Yeah. But what the spouse notices is that person has shifted in a way that's usually really, really good. Yeah. And they get curious about it, and then they want to come. And so we've had a lot of that happen as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when I first learned about it, it was probably 2019-ish, and I was interested in it, but I did not feel called yet. And what that looked like, that sort of line in the sand for me at the time, was what I just mentioned. Like, I knew that I needed to make that decision from a place of recovery, and not like, do I just want to go get high and find a loophole? Yeah. Which, P.S., everyone listening, like, if you want to, ayahuasca is not for that. Like, for sure. Maybe psilocybin, but not ayahuasca is not. That's like, right. You don't trip out. Like, no. And so it took me several years of just sort of following the breadcrumbs, as a lot of people talk about, and then definitely felt the calling. And then serendipitously things fell into place to get me there. And maybe for people listening, this podcast is one of the breadcrumbs for them. When you take a quick ad break, when we get back, I want to ask you specifically about what happens to our brains when we drink ayahuasca. So we'll be right back. At Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family. You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park, where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions, from Magi Quest, a live action game that takes place throughout the lodge, to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part, with 23 lodges across the country, you're always only a short drive away from adventure. I took my daughter there for her birthday a few years ago, and we had the best time. We stayed in one of their themed suites. There was so much to do inside the lodge, as well as all the water fun. The staff were great. The lifeguards were on it too. Would definitely go again. So bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack. This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. Let's be real. Midlife healthcare for women, historically trash. If you've been told, like I have, it's just aging, or you'll be fine when you're not sleeping, you're sweating through your sheets, or feeling like a stranger in your own body, you are very much not alone. Even today, 75% of women seeking menopause or perimenopause care are left untreated. That's not okay. But there's good news. It's time for MIDI. MIDI is a women's telehealth clinic founded by experts in midlife health, and they actually listen. You get one-on-one, face-to-face care tailored to your unique needs. And they're the only women's telehealth brand covered by major insurance, making expert care accessible and affordable. From hormone therapy to weight loss support and lifestyle coaching, MIDI has your back. Ready to feel your best and write your second act script? Visit joinmidi.com today to book your personalized, insurance-covered virtual visit. That's joinmidi.com. MIDI, the care women deserve.
Hi, everyone. This is Jenny Moniz from We Didn't Turn Out Okay podcast. Did you know at Great Wolf Lodge, there's adventure for the whole family? You and your pack can splash away in the indoor water park where it's always 84 degrees. There's a massive wave pool, a lazy river, and tons of water slides for your pack to enjoy together. And the fun doesn't stop there. Get ready to explore and play at adventure-packed attractions from Magi Quest, a live action game that takes place throughout the lodge to the Northern Lights Arcade. There's also a bunch of great dining options and complimentary daily events like nightly dance parties, all under one roof. And the best part, with 23 lodges across the country, you're always only a short drive away from adventure. As a parent who loves family adventures, I love when everything's in one place. It's why I can't wait to take my family to Great Wolf Lodge. So bring your pack together at a lodge near you. Book your stay today at greatwolf.com and strengthen the pack.
All right, we're back. So this is sort of like neurotalk time. And so my undergrad is in exercise physiology. So I geek out on anything that has to do with the human body and like how we behave and also like how our brains react to different things. And I loved your lecture that you gave in one of the classes at Rhythmia. I took pictures of the whiteboard and recorded part of it. And
Nice.
So what exactly happens in the brain when someone takes ayahuasca? And so what I remember from your talk is that some of the molecules in there are very similar to either serotonin or dopamine. And there's a second part of my question. And if you forget, I'll ask it again.
Cool.
But how are areas like the amygdala and you mentioned the prefrontal cortex, how are those interacting to help people with their trauma or their anxiety even?
I think it's important that we understand what DMT is, and that's the active ingredient in ayahuasca. So DMT stands for dimethyltryptamine. That's a natural molecule that's in almost all living things on the planet. Humans, mammals of all sorts, plants, all kinds of things have DMT in us already. And with humans, it's located behind the eye sockets, in the lining of the lungs, and in the bloodstream, it's where it gets released into. And people theorize that it's released by the pineal gland.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't been able to study that effectively, obviously, in humans, because that's an in vivo study. And no one's going to volunteer to have your brain cracked open and looked at like that.
Yikes. Thanks. Yeah.
But they've done other studies with other things that they've shown that the pineal gland has a large role in this. So then, all right, well, that's DMT. Well, what is it? Like, what does it do?
Right.
There's 3 main times it's released into the bloodstream. 1, when we're born. 2, when we die. And 3, during lucid dreams. Also, what I've learned through my research and gathering data and reading journal articles is that deja vu moment that we sometimes have in the day, that's a high DMT content moment. And so what they're studying in people is like the level of DMT in the bloodstream, why it's there, what's happening. And when we have kids, and I'm sure you remember this, the babies are very connected to something that's not really with us right here in the material world. My daughter, I have a 1.5-year-old, and she is constantly in her crib at night, looking up, talking and laughing and playing with something.
Yes.
And it's really cool.
Yeah.
And so DMT, when she was born, was strong in her bloodstream and still is. And it's a molecule that creates connection with ourselves and with nature and with other things, other people.
Oh, probably like our primary caregivers.
Absolutely.
Gotcha.
Absolutely. And so when I was with my dad when he passed about 7 years ago, and when he was dying, he was coherent enough to be able to talk to us a little bit. And what he was saying, which I'm sure a lot of people have had this experience with parents or family members, They're talking about their parents or their friends that have passed or their animals or pets that they had. There's a connection happening.
Or they see things in the room and use metaphors. That's what my dad did when he was
100%.
actively dying. Yeah.
And the DMT is strongly released during that time. And so there's a connection happening. There's this ability, it's an energetic molecule that brings us to a higher level of energy and connection with things that oftentimes we're not really seeing with our physical eyes. The lucid dreams are also very important to understand for the neurochemistry, because when you have a dream that's like kind of nonsensical, which is most dreams, that's just processing of whatever our thoughts during the day. But every once in a while, we'll have these dreams that are super impactful. There's like a message.
Yes.
And that's where there's a high DMT content released. So what happens is when you drink ayahuasca, you bring a little extra DMT into your body. And because of a Western cultural environmental lifestyle, our ability to tap into DMT naturally has been squashed in a lot of contexts because of the food we eat, because of the smog we're breathing. I'm from LA, down here in San Diego, it's not quite as smoggy, thank God, but LA, very smoggy. And then the stresses of the day, hearing horns honking all the time in Manhattan, right?
Right.
All of that stuff contributes to...
It's like pollution. That's like...
Pollution. Pollution. So my DMT reservoirs, in the way that I can release DMT naturally into my body, have been shut down. And the pumps that pump it out are dry. And so I drink ayahuasca. It calibrates neurochemical responses. It calibrates things in the brain. It sort of like lubricates the system. I call it priming the pump. So for those that live in farmlands, when there's a dry well, what does the farmer do? They add water to it, and then they pump and the water comes out. And so it's sort of like similar to that with neurochemistry, with our dendritic spines and the dendrites and the axons and the neurons. You remember biochemistry now, right?
It's all familiar.
Very cool. So what happens is when you drink ayahuasca, serotonin comes out and rebalances your serotonin levels, which has to do with your mood, has to do with how you feel about yourself and all kinds of things. Also, dopamine gets rebalanced. And then the DMT starts to flow in a way that's balanced and to meet your own needs. And so this uptake of DMT into the body from the ayahuasca sort of allows this evaluation process that's based in the amygdala, through the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. So the mind, we used to think, and I'm sure you remember this from school, we used to think the mind was rigid. By around age 25, it was locked in. But it's not like that. The brain is constantly evolving, constantly shifting, maybe not as strongly as it was when we were kids, but it still is adjusting even into older age. And so what does that mean exactly? Well, it means that there's neuron pathways being established newly that are firing in the mind, depending on what we're doing, what our intentions are, and what we're actively thinking about and working on. There's a lot of new data out that shows that if you can do 3 things, you can reset the way your mind thinks about yourself or about the world. Number 1, have an intention. I want to get past my anxiety. I want to no longer be anxious. Number 2, be mindful of that intention. I know this is what I'm working on. This is something I want to be focused on. Maybe when I do my yoga, I think about it. Or when I do my walk with the dog, I'm thinking about it. So you're mindful. Then the third is you meditate on that intention. In meditation, I'm not good at it, by the way.
Me neither, Dr. Jeff. Thank you for saying that.
I'm horrible at meditation.
But there's other things that I do that are similar. So yeah, I'm curious what you have to say about it. Please go on.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Meditation can be exercise. Meditation can be walking along the beach or in the mountains or in your neighborhood. Meditation can be sitting in silence, listening to music or whatever. It's just a moment where you're connecting to yourself and just trying to get away from all the distractions that we all have in our lives. And so when you do that, what happens is there's a gene called the sigma-1 gene that gets activated. And that gene accesses our amygdala.
I see. Okay.
And that is the basis of epigenetics.
Yeah.
That is what epigenetics is looking at. And so if I want to access my amygdala, why do I want to do that, right? Well, that's because I have unresolved trauma.
Right.
Or that's because I want to think about things differently. That's because maybe I'm going through a divorce knock on wood, thank God I'm not. But
I am.
Oh yeah, I did once before.
My second. It's okay. I got one on you.
I'm in my second right now. And so I don't want to feel sad anymore. I don't want to hold on to this thing that this anxiety that I'm passing to my kids, maybe. So when I turn on my Sigmar-1 gene, and ayahuasca and DMT helps that process, because when you drink ayahuasca, you're in a meditative state.
Yeah.
And you have intentions. So it's all perfect. And so what happens is you methylate and you histone coil the segment of DNA that's related to your anxiety and your fears and your worries. And so methylation is a stop protein that prevents the messenger. I'm getting really technical now, but I'll make it simple.
Okay.
As messenger RNA is being transcribed by reading the DNA code, it stops when it hits a methyl group and it detaches. It's like derails it. And then the messenger RNA continues on the DNA strand lower to create things our body needs. More serotonin, more dopamine, more proteins, more muscle mass, hair, whatever. And so methylation can block the process of the DNA that's leading to my genetic predisposition to addiction, anxiety, depression, worrying, whatever it might be that I inherited from my family or generationally. I'm intentionally not coding for it. Or a histone, if you remember those come into the DNA and they coil it up around like a spool, and they block the messenger RNA from reaching it because it's coiled up tightly like a yarn. And so this process is accomplished by all these different really cool modalities. Meditation itself does it. In the Eastern world, the gurus from India that meditate and do yoga and all that stuff, they're super healthy, they're super deep, they're really interesting people. That's because they're doing epigenetics on themselves constantly. Then you have these people that are in silence, like these monks that they don't talk for 10 years.
Yes.
I'm not recommending that for anybody, but because I would probably kill myself.
but that's a population that can also do that to their bodies.
That's another thing. Exactly. So there's these things that are out there that do this, but in the Western world, we're never taught these things. We're taught, don't worry about it. Just
here's a pill.
Think about here's a pill, or go see a therapist and try to connect with that therapist in 45-minute sessions once a week for 10 years.
Or maybe you should just calm down.
Yeah. What are you worried about? There's nothing to worry about, like denial and just all that stuff. So the beauty of the ayahuasca is it's really working with your own natural process.
Okay.
It's not this outside other. It's even though you are drinking a cup of this tea that's like a brew.
Yes.
And that's what's allowing your own natural process to work on the healing and to process from the amygdala. And if you have a synaptic connection between, let's say you see a dog and you're afraid, well, when you were a kid, you got bit by a dog. And so now every dog you see is a little bit nerve-wracking and you get scared.
Sure.
But you know that that's irrational because people have dogs as pets. Your wife wants a pet, your husband wants a pet, your kids want a pet, and you're always resistant. You have an intention. I want to like dogs. I want to get past the fear, and I'm going to really try and focus on it. So then you drink some ayahuasca, you do some yoga, you do some meditation, you have that as a goal. And then what happens is you tap into that fear, and the memories can surface and the emotions can surface. You go, oh yeah, when I was 5, I got bit by that pit bull. I totally forgot about it. And so that fear surfaces from the amygdala through the hippocampus to the prefrontal cortex. And that's where we have a psychosomatic release. That's where we purge. It's often heard of in ayahuasca. You might throw up. You might go to the bathroom. You might sweat. You might have these deep, deep, deep yawns that I'm a fan of those types of purges, yawning. So
I was more of a puker, but it wasn't too terrible. Yeah.
Most people are.
It wasn't that bad.
When that happens, that's an emotional release of that fear of being bit by that dog. And so then, because of your intention, I want to have a dog as a pet. I want to get past my fear. I want to understand why I have this. Then the mind is very open, and that's the synaptic plasticity we talk about. And you create a new neuron pathway through your intention setting goals. I want to like dogs. So then what ends up happening after you come out of that ayahuasca session or that meditation session or whatever it is you're doing, guess who comes up to you probably within 5 minutes? a friendly dog will show up because you're attracting that energy again.
Right.
And it's back. And so then you're past it and you can move forward in life with a pet and it's fine. Now, that's the analogy I use for all different things. Trust with others, relationships, my own self-identity, who I feel I am, my fears, all of that is realized through that process of intention setting, mindfulness, and then meditation.
Okay. Oh my gosh. And I know we haven't talked about integration yet and how important that is for all plant medicine modalities, not just ayahuasca, but I love the mix of magic and medicine. And by medicine, I mean the science of like what really is happening because I'm kind of like, all right, this tea sounds cool, but prove it. The very first time I ever saw a nutritionist, I'm like, can you draw out for me why trans fats are bad versus other kinds of fats? And she looked at me and I was like 25, and she looked at me like I was weird. And I'm like, this isn't just like a pops quiz to be a jerk. Like I'm genuinely interested. And I was fascinated by how she drew it and it made sense to me. So I'm endlessly fascinated about how we work. And you said a couple of words that jumped out at me. So one was evaluation, and you didn't stay there for very long, but if I may kind of say how that showed up for me is, and this is, any plant medicine, you're going to want to have an intention. You're not just going to want to, because if you don't, then you're just kind of doing it recreationally, I feel like. But if you're truly using plant medicine for a healing modality, for a therapeutic modality, then having an intention is important. And at Rhythmia, one of the things I love about you guys is that you really set it up for people to success in terms of, and as a facilitator of personal growth, like I noticed this, the 3 steps that you take, and I won't get into it too much, and it's all on the website, but one of them is you give participants an intention to, if you're not sure what your intention is to be, this is a really great one for you to have. Can you remind me what it is? The first
Show
one?
me who I've become.
Show me who I have become. Okay. And so Dr. Jeff, because I am an overachiever, and also we have free will to make up our own intentions, I love that intention. And at the same time, I wasn't there for a specific reason, like fear of dogs. I knew I was going through a personal transformation in my life, coming out of my second marriage, other transformations as well. And so I really sat with myself for a while and knew that intuitively the intention would come for me. And I think it was the second night, maybe it was the first night. My intention that came to me intuitively, show me what it is I am afraid to see.
That's a good one.
Okay.
That's an intimidating one too.
Be careful what you ask for, Andrea.
Yeah. You went right to the point.
I went for the jugular, totally not thinking. I think it was my first night. And like how Mother Ayahuasca was like, we don't play,
Right.
If you're going to ask, I'm going to show you. So what I was shown, not just that first night, but it became a theme for all 4 of my ceremonies. They were all different, but they all had the underlying theme. And my audience is not going to be surprised because I've been talking about this a lot on the podcast, was grief.
Yeah.
The most profound grief I have ever experienced in my life during these ceremonies. And the way I describe it is I feel like someone inserted a zip drive inside of my body, not just my brain, inside of my body, and then unzipped it and ran, like almost like a firecracker.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I'm left like, there is no way on this earth I am going to be able to experience all this grief. And in one ceremony, I experienced what felt like, and there was the sacred geometry was, I saw a piece of lace that was like underneath me and I was trying to reach for it and I couldn't quite reach it. And I'm like, is that a spider or is it lace? And as soon as I grabbed it, I experienced the grief of my entire maternal line and all of the babies and all of the children they had ever lost.
Wow. That's
and
heavy.
I wept and wept and wept.
Yeah.
And the medicine family came and did their Olympia cleansing on me because I was having a rough time. It was very obvious. But here's what I want to make sure that I say is that I'm someone, and I've said it on the podcast a million times, I was so afraid of my own emotions because of my primary experiences around them. I thought to myself, I believed that if I opened up Pandora's box, I was never going to stop crying. Like I knew that my depth for emotions was so deep, I was terrified of it. And so I spent the majority of my life like pushing that down, drinking too much, avoiding with relationships, looking for someone else to save me, most likely husbands that I've collected. None of it was working. And so that and the subsequent ayahuasca ceremonies showed me that I can handle way more than I ever dreamed of. Not only can I handle my own, I can handle other people's as well and come out on the other side a little bruised for it, but so much better. And what an honor it was for me to be able to experience that. And it was, and if you would have asked me, like, what do you think it's going to be like? I sure shit wouldn't have said that. So that speaks to me, that's like sort of like the evaluation I got. Like it felt like the medicine went through my body and was like, okay, I see what we're dealing with. And here's what you need. And epigenetics. So the story that I told, is that kind of in line with like what you meant by evaluation and epigenetics?
Yeah. Self-evaluation of your own process and what you experience. By the way, thank you for saying that, because that's such a profound healing that I have found unattainable in any other modality, just personally, unless you put in a lot of time into some other sort of practice. That is an incredible event that happened for you within a week.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's incredible.
When I was in it, I remember thinking, I said out loud at the very end, and my mattress mate, the woman next to me, started laughing because I said, I really hope tomorrow is easier.
Yeah. Well, what happens is we think that our trauma is, and again, it was really hard when it was happening.
Yeah.
But now it's been many years usually, and we're afraid of the trauma. Understandably, I don't want to look at it. It's going to be, I'm never going to stop crying.
Right.
Open up Pandora's box, etc. But what you learn is that you can absolutely handle it, and you become what I call ego dystonic. Now, our ego is something that I don't want to talk about the ego in a narcissistic way, because everybody says, oh, they have a big ego. That's not what I mean by the ego. Ego, what I mean by it is it's a part of who we are that's formed through our life experiences. We've outgrown certain components of our ego. So if my ego was formed when I was 5 in this one area of not trusting anybody because I was disappointed by my caregivers, I've outgrown that part, but I'm still not trusting people. And I'm now an adult man and I want to have a relationship. I can't. I keep picking the wrong people. So that part of the ego I've outgrown. Yeah. So what happens then when you have that as a goal to get past your fear of trust? Then an ego syntonic position is the old position where the world is existing through my eyes only. I can't connect to anybody else around me deeply because I don't understand that they have a different view. And that's where the personality disorders lie that we've all studied in school. The 10 personality disorders are egosyntonic. So what happens is I become my own counselor. I become my own therapist. I do my own self-evaluation. I step out of me and I look, wow, I'm being resistant over here and I'm drinking too much in this way. And I'm doing all these behaviors. I can see it. I can detach from the behaviors and I can look at myself and I can really evaluate. And that's the ego dystonic position that is super healthy and way more functioning and better. And that's where that release comes from. It sparks that psychosomatic purge in the crying and the self-awareness. That's where that all happens. So it's just this amazing process that can happen very quickly. And it's so empowering because you did it. A therapist didn't do it for you. Right. A shaman didn't do it for you. They just facilitated an environment where you could do it for yourself, which is so important with the set and setting of this plant medicine.
To feel safe there. Yeah. And be of sound mind when I walked in. And okay, we need to take another ad break. We'll be right back, everybody.
Taking on a DIY job around the house is the ultimate summer project. But if your DIY home security system is a beware of dog sign, when your real pet is Princess the cat, that's safe-ish. To be actually safe, help protect your home with a DIY system from ADT. It's easy to install and gives you virtual assistance from ADT's technical support team. Best of all, you can tell everyone in the neighborhood you set it up yourself. Don't settle for safe-ish this summer. DIY with ADT instead. Visit ADT.com to learn more.
Breaking up is never easy, but saying goodbye to your old clunky work tools? Well, that's easy. Just repeat after me. It's not me, it's definitely you. You rigid, unfriendly software. It's time to freshen things up with Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use. With stunning dashboards, customizable templates, and built-in AI that actually works, switching to a new work platform has never felt this good. So move on to Monday.com.
Introducing the new Volvo XC90 with 7-seat versatility, Google built-in, and advanced safety features for all your precious cargo. The new Volvo XC90, designed for life. Visit volvocars.com/US to learn more.
Okay, we're back. I want to talk about like results, and because that's what everybody wants to know about. And not only is plant medicine a risk because most of us grew up knowing like psychedelics are scary, like the LSD, you know, like I was a child of the 80s. And so we grew up on the just say no. And that still, you know, kind of floats around in our brain. And then also places like Rhythmia are kind of moving mountains to get there. It's in another country and, you know, it's a lot. And so, and I know that Rhythmia has been around for many years now. Did you say 20,000 people have gone through it?
20,000 people. We're almost at our 10-year mark soon.
That's right. I remember that. Okay. So from the guests that you just have personally seen at Rhythmia and have people with anxiety and trauma done things like gone off their meds after ceremony, and like what's a kind of like typical mental health follow through that looks like for people that specifically do ayahuasca?
So at Rhythmia, there's a certain sort of protocol that we're following, and we're following up with guests 6 months out after they leave. And we're also giving them an app that they can
yes, which is really great, by the way. I love the simplicity of it. And
yeah, it's really easy to use. It's 13 weeks of content, and there's group therapy in there that's all free. It's really cool. What we've found from the people that are reporting back to us, alumni, is that if they had anxiety prior to coming to Rhythmia, or if they had depression or trauma or addiction or suicidal ideation or whatever it might be before coming to Rhythmia, then we ask them after they got home 6 months later, how are you doing with those things? 62 to 85% of the people that respond say they have either no symptoms of any of those things, or they've completely healed it, or it's just a lot less.
Yes.
Right? It's crazy.
That's amazing.
Now with depression, 85%, that's the higher end of it. 85% say that they are not back on their meds that they got off of to come to Rhythmia. So 85% have not gone back to meds, which is a crazy, amazing statistic.
Yeah.
In healthcare, we're used to seeing 10% success rate, 12% on the high end, 3 to 5% success rate in addiction recovery. Like that's the kind of stuff we're used to seeing. When you get into the 80s, the 90% success rate, even 68, 62, that's crazy good. That's amazing. Yeah. So as a medical facility, we can't make medical claims. Like we can't say, if you come to Rhythmia, we'll cure your depression. We can't say that. But what we can say is that our guests report having these experiences, these results, because we are collecting data and we are going to be doing research, and we are expanding, and we're going to be doing much more of this stuff. So the data, the outcome data is incredible. And that's the part I love.
Okay. I love that so much too. And to be fair, like one of the reasons that I decided to go to Rhythmia to do ayahuasca is because I had really great results from ketamine therapy. Yes. And that was my first step into any kind of psychedelic therapy. I'd done talk therapy for years and years and years, and it was super helpful. And I felt like I reached a level where I'm like, I need something. And that was in 2020. And I told the therapist that I had hired then, I said, I feel like I need an exorcism. And I'm like, I know that's a strange word to use, but I feel like there's this one particular trauma that's been around for 20 years. And the way I described it, because I love metaphors, I said, I feel like I can't land the plane. And I know logically that I should be able to, but there's this separation between knowing that this shouldn't be a big deal. It's kind of like the dog example that you gave. Like I was feeling that. And so ketamine therapy helped me so much. I saw the most amazing metaphors and visions. And so I had a very strong feeling. I was like, okay, I can take another step into this and see what happens. Nice. Very different experience with ketamine versus ayahuasca. I wouldn't say that one was better than the other. Ayahuasca was definitely, it felt more kind of ancient, if you will, than ketamine. And so I have one more question for you before we end. And what do you anticipate, like from a doctor's perspective and someone that's been in this particular niche industry for a while, what do you anticipate for the future of plant medicine, specifically in mainstream anxiety care?
We've already seen some great advancements in the acceptance of it globally for plant medicine in general, but there's a lot of resistance. It's understandable, some of the resistance that is individual resistance to the process, because there's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of lack of knowledge about it. But I come from a policy background with my public health experience. If I'm a policymaker and I'm trying to set forth laws and different things, I want to know what is safe and what is not safe for the general public. Ketamine, for example, very safe. Psilocybin, very safe. LSD therapy done the right way, very safe. Cannabis, super safe. Ayahuasca, not as safe. And the reason is because of the monoamine oxidase inhibitor component of the ayahuasca. And that means that there's contraindications with it. Medical contraindications, SSRIs, benzodiazepines,
ADHD meds,
ADHD meds, all of these things. So you really have to be monitoring the people that are going to be participating in the ayahuasca ceremonies. And that's why Rhythmia is so great, because we're a medically licensed facility, the only one in the world, to be honest. There's nobody else doing it but us, medically licensed. So with anxiety and with the future of plant medicine, I think that it was I like to look at it like the cannabis model. Like the cannabis model it's a grassroots push to get it to be legal.
Yeah. And or at the very least, like decriminalized. Yeah.
Or decriminalized. Exactly. So I feel that the public is going to be demanding for alternative things that they can use that are helpful, like psilocybin, microdosing, like ketamine. Ketamine is becoming much more legal in all the different states. It's mostly legal almost everywhere in the US now. And so I think that we're on the right track, because the public is just kind of sick and tired of the medical model of just meds
or just treating symptoms. Yeah.
Just treating symptoms. Exactly. Addiction tends to be like that too. Sometimes just treating the symptoms of addiction. So I think that we're on the right path, but it's going to take a lot of the pharmaceutical industry is going to have to get on board with it. Yeah. We all know they're very powerful, and they
don't exactly like a medication that, someone doesn't have to take every day.
Correct. They're like, oh no. Right. So, but I think like if there's other ways for the pharmaceutical industry, unfortunately, to get involved in a way that's going to be better for the general public. Yeah. So there has to be some accountability like that for these industries. But I feel that it's happening because we're expanding. Rhythmia is being sought out for other jurisdictions. And there's a lot of things happening in the world that are leading toward more healing. So the outlook looks really good, and from my view.
Can I ask you one more quick question?
Of course.
It's something specific that happened to me during one of the ceremonies that I talked to a few other people and no one said that they experienced this. And I did talk to one of the medicine family when it was happening, and she told me what it was. So it was on night 4 with Taito, and it was the Yahi ayahuasca. And I had really great experiences the first 3 nights. And I think only one of the nights I had 3 cups. One I had 2, and then I think one of the nights I only had 1. So I wasn't drinking a lot of it. 4th night I drank my first drink, and it was kind of like normal. And then, so I have in the past on and off had chronic hypertension and been medicated on and off for it. It got really bad during one of my pregnancies, but lately it's my blood pressure has been good. And it was, I'm not on meds, but when I got there, my blood pressure was high. And so they were giving me, I don't even know what it was. It might've been an atenolol or something every morning.
Lisinopril.
Yeah. So it was every morning I was taking that, and I felt fine, but I know with high blood pressure, like when you're not fine, the symptoms are, headache. I knew what to look for.
Yeah.
About an hour in, maybe 45-ish minutes, I think I had just purged. I had that feeling, when you're not feeling well, and then you kind of tip over and you're like, I'm a little scared. Like, I think that I'm really, really unwell, like not normal unwell. I'm very, very unwell. So I thought if I stand up am I going to pass out? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and then my next thought was, I guess we're going to find out.
Yeah.
So I stood up and was walking towards the sliding glass doors in the Maluka, and was looking for someone to help me. And there was no one in the seats. They were all gone helping other people. And I was like, well, shit, what do I do? And so I started to walk outside to get some fresh air and grab someone that was part of the medicine family. And I said, I have high blood pressure. I think I am either going to have a seizure or pass out. One of those two is about to happen. What I didn't tell him was there was also a third option that I was thinking, like, I'm going to die. Like, I really truly felt like I was on the verge of death because of my blood pressure. Like, it was really scary.
Totally.
And so he said, what do you need? And I was just staring at him like I couldn't, and I couldn't get my thoughts together. And this is one drink I had.
Wow.
And I said, I think I need a medic. And he said, all right, I'll be right back. Stay right here. And he sat me down and he said, I'll be right back. And when he said, I'll be right back, it was like, I'll be right back.
Yeah.
So my vision started to focus and I was like, oh shit, this is bad. Like,
you're fainting.
Physically, like I'm on my way out.
Yeah.
And then he was gone for what felt like 17 years, but it was probably just a couple minutes. And he said, he came back and he's like, I'm still looking, hang tight.
Yeah.
And I remember the overwhelming feeling of, this might make me cry. I thought, if I'm going to die, I just don't want to be by myself. Like, can someone, like, I legitimately thought I was dying. And Dr. Dick, I am not over dramatic. Like, I am not a hypochondriac. Like, I'm not that girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was serious. And so
scary.
Finally, they still couldn't find the medic, but one of the medicine family women came over. And I was so thankful, A, that it was a woman, and B, that she was my age.
Yeah.
And I cannot remember her name, but she had silver hair. It was,
Ananta.
Yes, that was her.
She's great.
It was up in a bun, and she sat with me, and I looked up and it looked like there was 30 people in front of me, but surely there wasn't. There was maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then it was at that moment where I felt like I had been shot out of my body. And it was almost like I was having a seizure in my body, not necessarily my brain, but it was like my eyes and my body were just, it was as if I went through like 7 lifetimes, like in a matter of seconds.
Wow.
And then I was so terrified. And I'm like, I knew I wasn't dying at that point. I knew I was lucid enough to know, like, okay, this is ayahuasca, but I was also like, this doesn't feel normal.
Yeah.
And also, and she held my face and she said, you're having a double reaction. And I said, am I dying? And she said, no. And she's like, we're going to try to lay you down. And then at that point, I felt like I was going to throw up, and I had already, it was just retching because I was done at that point. So that part only lasted about maybe a minute, but it was so terrifying. It felt like it was a lot longer. And then for like 2 hours, I proceeded to have the most profound somatic experience of my life. I had undulations and hip rotations and hand movements that did not belong to me. And I know it was all very ancient, and spirit was coming through me.
Yep.
And so I'll spare you the details of like all the rest of it. It was incredibly profound, but can you tell me, and of course I Googled and talked to ChatGPT about what is a double reaction specifically around yahi, and got some decent information, but can you tell me what was happening? Like,
yeah. Again, everybody's going to have their own opinion about what was happening, but my experience is that you traveled into that astral plane. You went there, and the astral plane is not, I'm sure, as you know, it's not like some faraway place. It's right around us. And so you disconnected from your physical self. You were connecting 100%. To the spiritual self in the spiritual world. And so a lot of people have different views on what that world is like. Some people think it's energetic only, or some people think it is spiritual. But whatever you might think, or whatever your listeners might think, there's this other place that's at a different energetic level than the physical world. And you were there. And that's why you were having those sort of movements that were maybe not yours, maybe ancient. It's because you were connecting with that energy, with those spiritual people. And the 30 individuals you saw, that was also interesting, because that wasn't like blurry vision necessarily. No. That was people that were there safeguarding and watching you. And so you were in a safe environment, And so you were connected to these really angelic, good spiritual beings. And there's a lot of healing there. And that's often what they talk about saying is an ego death.
Yes. I felt like I died that night.
And it's not that the ego's dead. It's that the ego is reorganized in a healthier way. So it's like a rebirth is what it's really
That's
like.
exactly what it felt like.
Yeah. And so you had the most, and what's really cool is that Taito Juanito says he's blown away by how many of these rebirths and ego deaths that we've had at Rhythmia, because he says that shamans strive their whole life to get to that moment. And so we have it happening every week with, a certain percentage of guests. And you were in that group and you had that. And so that's like amazing that you had that. It's super scary for that short period of time.
Oh my God.
But once you break through that, you're connected. And this is the thing too. The vine of ayahuasca is called the vine of the dead in the indigenous language in Latin America. That's because it mimics the death process. Now, not because it's macabre or scary or ghosts or something. It's because if you're not afraid of death, then you're not afraid to live, and you can live to your fullest, because a lot of that death fear is what holds us back from living. And so you are no longer held back or restrained from your life purpose and your sort of, what you're destined to be and do.
Holy shit.
Amazing.
To say it was life-changing is a vast understatement. And the next morning when I was leaving the Maluka, I turned around and looked at that back deck and I took a picture because no one was there. And I truly feel like I said, I died out on that deck. Like a part of me died. If it happened again, I would at least this time know I wasn't legitimately going to die. I wouldn't enjoy it. I wouldn't look forward to it. It was the scariest thing I've ever experienced. And it's also so unexplainable. This whole world fascinates me so much because even as a child, you were talking about how when we're very young, we're more connected to the void and the other side.
Totally.
And I remember distinctly being in the bathtub one time and I had to be like maybe 5. Like I wasn't a baby, but I was a little bit older. I'm a big fan of Florence and the Machine. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Of course.
One of the, in Choreomania, there's a line where she says, "Do they speak to you because they speak to me too?" And I was in the tub and my mom was in the bathroom and I said, "Mom, do you ever hear someone talking to you that like," and basically I was explaining to her, like, it's not my thoughts and it's not real voices. Like, what is that? Bless that woman for not making me wrong for it. Like, and she said, "Oh, honey, that's God." I have always held on to that and trust that voice. And like, I truly believe that I have, not that I'm more special or unique than anybody, but there is some kind of portal that I have asked to be open. And I keep asking for it to be open, which is very vulnerable and scary.
Sure.
To be able to communicate with the dead, with my angel, all of them.
Absolutely.
And I think that probably all people, if not the vast majority of people, have that ability. But I appreciate your extra time and talking to me about this because I didn't talk to anybody else who experienced that. And it made me a little nervous. And then also I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want like people to think that like I was, had some kind of like special, poltergeist ability, but it was wild.
You're on a path that is, let's say, more evolved than maybe some other people that were at the retreat center that week. And so
I believe.
It's a natural progression for you.
Of my own evolution.
So, and some of those people that maybe didn't have that experience might get there, down the road. Yeah. And so it's a beautiful experience, and the good news is it likely won't happen again like that if you were to do ayahuasca again or have another experience, because that was like you breaking through that portal and that you transition. So now now you can kind of go back and forth now more freely. And the only way you would, let's say, replay that is if you jumped back into old behaviors, old ways of thinking, dysfunctional stuff, which you're not going to do that.
Probably not. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have bet that you're not going to do that. So you're already on that. You've leveled up. So now it's just going to keep going, leveling up as you go. It's amazing. How cool.
It is. And it feels like a really kind of big responsibility, like in my own work, but also I have been endlessly curious for like my whole life. Like even when I would come across like an artist or a poet or a songwriter who can seem to access something that most of us can't, and I'm like, they have the ability to be closer to the void.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out how to get there.
100%.
And here I am,
That's why I loved working in addiction, because the people that have addictions tend to be in that range.
Yes. Some of the most brilliant, most creative, intelligent, and also wounded and traumatized people are addicts, and they're so misunderstood.
Yes.
And don't get me up on my soapbox for that, but
you and I are in the same school of thought on that.
yeah, there's some about our brains that's just a little bit interesting. I just hope that more people, that this industry ends up getting to a point where more people can access it. I mean, whether that's, through big pharma, like I'm okay with it. I don't love it, but I also don't hate it.
Yeah. Well, we have to work within the systems that exist. Like Buckminster Fuller, his philosophy of the buckyball, if you remember that from physics, that it's the system changes by not destroying the system and starting over. The system changes by shifting the angles of the ball and working within the system of physical reality that we already have.
Yeah.
So that's pharmaceutical industry is part of that system.
Okay. All right. Oh my gosh. I had so many other questions that I didn't get to ask you, but I would love to have you back on if you're up for it,
Absolutely.
in 6 months.
I'd love to. Yeah.
Especially after I am working on bringing a group to Rhythmia and be able to do integration coaching with them, which I'm super excited about. Is there anything that you want to make sure that you say before we log off that you didn't get to, or that even that you want to underscore?
Nowadays, the world is so crazy and so chaotic, and we're all so busy with things we're doing. We don't have time to like heal ourselves, but we really see that people need healing. The goal is to heal yourself first. Yes. You got to heal yourself first. And then you can help support the healing in your family, your friends, your community, and then the world. And that's how things shift and that's how things change.
Thank you so much for that. Everyone, thank you so much for your time. And if you are interested in coming with me in that group to Rhythmia, please DM me on Instagram. I'm at Hey Andrea Owen there. Or you can email us support@AndreaOwen.com. And the Rhythmia link is in the show notes for anyone who's interested in just going by themselves or for a family member. Remember, it's our life's journey to make ourselves better humans and our life's responsibility to make the world a better place. Bye for now. Hey, did you know there's free secret podcast episodes waiting for you that are not part of my regular podcast feed? Yes, AndreaOwen.com/free. And you just sign up. You get a link sent to you. It's very secret. It's like a secret club. We don't have a secret handshake. Don't worry about that. But it's these motivating podcast episodes that I made for you. They're under 20 minutes each. There's 3 of them. They're for wherever you are in your life. So head on over there and grab them. They range from really supporting you and seeing you where you are and being compassionate, all the way to giving you a giant kick in your ass and telling you how amazing and gorgeous and phenomenal you are. So AndreaOwen.com/free and get your hands on that free podcast feed.
This episode is brought to you by FX's Alien Earth, the official podcast. Each week, host Adam Rogers is joined by guests, including the show's creator, cast, and crew, in this exclusive companion podcast. They will explore story elements, deep dive into character motivations, and offer an episode-by-episode behind-the-scenes breakdown of each terrifying chapter in this new series. Search FX's Alien Earth wherever you listen to podcasts.